Once upon a time, the earth was formless and void, but God spoke, and we began. Come, all ye who tire of darkness. Come, all you who hope in the light. Come, all who seek God among us and with us. Come, stand and sing. Come, Emmanuel, come.
Today is an exciting day. It is the first Sunday in Advent. Advent is the season of preparation and waiting for Christmas and the birth of the Christ child.
Long ago, the prophet Micah promised the people of Bethlehem that from their small and humble town would come a great and peaceful ruler who, unlike the other rulers of his day, would lead God's people as a shepherd loves and cares for his sheep. This promise gave the people hope.
Micah said, "From you, little Bethlehem, will come a wonderful leader for the whole world. He will be like a good shepherd who loves and takes care of each sheep in his flock. He will take care of all people, especially those who need extra help. All God's people will be safe with this leader because he will lead with peace and fairness. He will be the greatest leader the world has ever seen. There is hope. Live with hope, you people of Bethlehem."
Today we light the first candle of Advent, the candle of hope, to remind us of the promise of hope God gave to little Bethlehem through the prophet Micah.
Please stand as you're able, and let's sing the next hymn printed in our bulletin.
From Genesis chapter 1. First this, God created the heavens and earth, all you see, all you don't see. Earth was a soup of nothingness, a bottomless emptiness, and inky blackness. God's spirit brooded like a bird above the watery abyss. God spoke, "Light," and light appeared. God saw light was good and separated light from dark. God named the light day. He named the dark night. It was evening, it was morning, day one.
Born of cold and winter air and mountain rain combining, this icy force, both foul and fair, has frozen heart worth mining. Cut through the heart, cold and clear. Strike for love and strike for fear. See the beauty sharp and sheer. Split the ice apart and break the frozen heart. Hup, ho, watch your step, let it go. Hup, ho, watch your step and let it go. Beautiful power, dangerous cold. Ice has magic, can't be controlled. Stronger than one, stronger than 10, stronger than 100 men. Born of cold and winter air, the mountain rain combining. This icy force, both foul and fair, has a frozen heart worth mining. Cut through the heart, cold and clear. Strike for love and strike for fear. There's beauty and there's danger here. Split the ice apart. Beware the frozen heart. From Frozen, the movie.
There once was a velveteen rabbit, and in the beginning he was really splendid. He was fat and bunchy as a rabbit should be. His coat was spotted brown and white. He had real thread whiskers, and his ears were lined with pink sateen. On Christmas morning, when he sat wedged in the top of Boy's stocking with a sprig of holly between his paws, the effect was charming. Well, there were other things in the stocking, nuts and oranges and a toy engine and chocolate almonds and a clockwork mouse, but the rabbit was quite the best of all. For at least 2 hours, the boy loved him. And then aunts and uncles came to dinner, and there was a great rustling of tissue paper and unwrapping of parcels, and then the excitement of looking at all the new presents. The velveteen rabbit was forgotten. The velveteen rabbit.
A man appeared on the corner the cat had been watching. Appeared so suddenly and silently, you'd have thought he just popped up out of the ground. The cat's tail twitched, and its eyes narrowed. Nothing like this man had ever been seen on Privet Drive. He was tall, thin, and very old, judging by the silver of his hair and beard, which were both long enough to be tucked into his belt. He was wearing long robes and a purple cloak that swept the ground, and high-heeled, buckled boots. His eyes were blue, were bright, light, and sparkled behind half-moon spectacles, and his nose was very long and crooked, as though it had been broken at least twice. This man's name was Albus Dumbledore, from Harry Potter.
From Isaiah chapter 43. Do not remember the former things, or consider the things of old. I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. The wild animals will honor me, the jackals and the ostriches. For I give water in the wilderness, rivers in the desert, to give drink to my chosen people, the people whom I formed for myself, so that they might declare my praise.
a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. It is a period of civil war. Rebel spaceships striking from a hidden base have won their first victory against the evil Galactic Empire. During the battle, rebel spies managed to steal secret plans to the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star, an armored space station with enough power to destroy an entire planet. Pursued by the Empire's sinister agents, Princess Leia races home aboard her starship, custodian of the stolen plans that can save her people and restore freedom to the galaxy. Star Wars, A New Hope.
The night Max wore his wool suit and made mischief of one kind and another, his mother called him Wild Thing, and Max said, "I'll eat you up." So he was sent to bed without eating anything. And that very night in Max's room, a forest grew and grew and grew until his ceiling hung with vines, and the walls became the world all around, and an ocean tumbled by with a private boat for Max. And he sailed off through night and day and in and out of weeks and almost over a year to where the wild things are. From the wild things.
At the far end of town, where the grickle grass grows, and the wind smells slow and sour when it blows, and no birds ever sing excepting old crows, is the street of the lifted Lorax. And deep in the grickle grass, some people say, if you look deep enough, you can still see today where the Lorax once stood just as long as it could before somebody lifted the Lorax away. What was the Lorax? Why was it there? And why was it lifted and taken somewhere from the far end of town where the grickle grass grows? The old Onceler still lives here. Ask him. He knows. From the Lorax.
From John, chapter 1. Before time itself was measured, the voice was speaking. The voice was and is God. This celestial word remained ever present with the Creator. His speech shaped the entire cosmos. Immersed in the practice of creating, all things that exist were birthed in him. His breath filled all things with a living, breathing light, a light that thrives in the depths of darkness, that blazes through murky bottoms. It cannot and will not be quenched.
Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, whose misadventured piteous overthrows do with their death bury their parents' strife. The fearful passage of their death-marked love and the continuance of their parents' rage, which but their children's end not could remove, is now the 2 hours' traffic of our stage, the which if you with patient ears attend, wait here shall miss, what here shall miss, our toil shall strive to mend. Romeo and Juliet.
If you are interested in stories with happy endings, better off reading some other book. In this book, not only is there no happy endings, there is no happy beginnings and very few happy things in the middle. This is because not very many happy things happened in the lives of the three Bandelier youngsters. Violet, Klaus, and Sunny Bandelier were intelligent children, and they were charming and resourceful and had pleasant facial features, but they were extremely unlucky. and most everything that happened to them was rife with misfortune and misery and despair. I'm sorry to tell you this, but that is how the story goes. A series of unfortunate events.
Once upon a time, there lived an unhappy young girl. Her mother was dead, and her father had married a widow with 2 daughters. Her stepmother didn't like her one bit. All her kind thoughts and loving touches were for her own daughters. Nothing was too good for them: dresses, shoes, delicious food, soft beds, and every home comfort. But for the poor, unhappy girl, there was nothing at all. No dresses, only her stepsister's hand-me-downs. No lovely dishes, nothing but scraps. No rest, and no comfort. She had to work hard all day. Only when evening came was she allowed to sit for a while by the fire near the cinders. That's why everybody called her Cinderella. From Cinderella.
From Luke, chapter 1. Since many have undertaken to set down an orderly account of the events that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed on to us by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and servants of the word, I too decided, after investigating everything carefully from the very first, to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the truth concerning the things about which you have been instructed.
Every story has a beginning. Some are familiar, some are new, some are fictional and imagined, some are rooted in reality. Some are worth remembering over the ages to be retold over and over again, and some we'd rather just forget. We celebrate every Advent hearing a familiar story, the story of Jesus' birth, a new beginning for humanity, for creation. And this story is not meant to be filed away on a library shelf. It is a story that you are invited to be a part of. Your life is called to be a chapter in this ongoing story. That God is with us and for us and has desired to work in and through us. What new beginnings do you celebrate? What new beginnings do you hope and long for? Enter the story of hope. Come, behold Emmanuel, a light for a new world.
Thank you.
New beginnings. Beginning anew, we often have our hopes wrapped up in some new start. When I was in the 3rd grade, I was put into a class, kids, with none of my friends from the 2nd grade. Can you imagine? How many of you has that happened to you? It was tough. I didn't know anybody. And I had a hard time getting to know people. I was a little bit shy. And so I decided that maybe this was a chance for a new beginning. And I've told this story before, but I decided that Matt was the shy, quiet Matt, and then I needed a new name. And so I decided that my new name, probably from watching too much Happy Days, would be Spike. A tough new name. Oh, I thought if I was just called Spike, then people would see me differently. I wouldn't be so shy, and I'd be like the Fonz. Confident and strong, and I'd make friends. I put all my hope into that. Well, it didn't really work. And it was a source of laughter. And so, like many of us do in school, I look forward to, well, next year in the 4th grade will be different. A new school for us in that time. A new start. New friends. Maybe I would be put in the class with my best friend, which I was. We look for new beginnings, and I have looked for mine. Micah speaks of this aching hope for a new start for his people. A new light, a new shepherd who would guide them, love them, and care for them. And we too often ache for that new start. This story isn't just rooted in history, it is our story. And it's my story too. I often ache for that new start and that new beginning. Coming here as your pastor was a risk, a new start, and a new beginning, with lots of hopes and dreams for what it might be like. Some of those have come true. Some surprises have been in the mix, like snow. But often we look, and I look, for that new beginning and the things that I can control and the things that I can change. But Micah and our story that we remember in Advent is that a new beginning comes to us, not in what we can control or manipulate or change, but in what God does and how God acts, giving us light and a new beginning in Christ.
I don't know about you, but my new beginnings tend to be a series of continual new beginnings and beginnings and beginnings and beginnings that seem to be playing out just as a good prologue or first chapter of a story might. I don't know what's going to end. I don't know what the final chapter is going to be, and that's okay. A lot of times, I don't even know that I'm beginning in a beginning when I'm beginning in a beginning. You don't really know that till you get to chapter 2. My beginning that I want to share with you today is the one that brought me here. My beginning started several Halloweens ago when I was a few months in of my first and, unbeknownst to me at the time, last appointment as a United Methodist clergy person. And a few months into a new life, being single after having a 7-year relationship come to an end. It's just not in a good place. I wasn't liking my job. I wasn't really sure that that's where I was supposed to be. I felt as though I had moved too fast. I went to undergrad, graduate school, and boom, I was somebody's pastor. I just wasn't in a good place. So I had moved, luckily, was appointed back to a place where I knew a lot of people. And it was where I went to college. And my roommate was still there at the time, and my roommate said, come with me to this Halloween party. And just try to forget about things. Come to this Halloween party. I said, fine, whatever. I don't have a costume, so I think I probably went to like Walgreens or something and got some piece of, I don't know, something I put on and called it a costume. It was not a costume. Anyway, we got there, and he said to me, oh, I know you've met her before, but you remember my sister Alex, right? And I said, oh, yeah. Hi, Alex. Alex and I talked that night and didn't really think of anything of it. Hung out again as a group later. And then we went to another party invited by her brother. And turns out we kind of liked each other. And we were getting ready to all leave, and I said, well, Alex, I'll give you a ride home. And Rusty, her brother, said, Alex, you're going to the same place we are. Why don't you just ride with us? And Rusty's girlfriend, now wife at the time, said, I think it's fine. So we all parted our ways, and we were getting in the car, and apparently, once they got in the car, Melinda said to Rusty, I think John and Alex kind of like each other. And his response was, no, that's not the case. Fast forward a couple of years. Alex and I are packing up all of our belongings into a U-Haul and towing our car halfway across the country to start a new life here. We decided to get married out here. We decided we'd probably find jobs. And we just left. We took it on our own to start a new beginning as we were starting a new beginning. And since that time, everything has been new. New jobs. Newer jobs. That's this one, by the way. A new baby. All of which comes not only with a newness of beginnings, but with a promise of hope. A promise of hope for something that I have no idea what it's going to be, but something that I know will be good, regardless of the ups and downs. That's where I connect with Micah today.
I know it might surprise some of you, but I have a really hard time sitting still. And I've always been like that. When I was in elementary school, my teacher called me motor mouth because not only could my body not sit still, but neither could my mouth. But when I was in elementary school, I discovered something new. My mother had to push me into it. But I discovered ballet. Now, I would like to tell you that when I went to ballet, my mouth stayed still, but it did not. Gretchen Storr Evans from the New York City Ballet taught my class in Denver, Colorado, and she on many occasions had to say, Sharon. She even threatened to put tape on my mouth. She never did. But my elementary teacher, Mrs. Prather, who called me motor mouth, every day I would go to school and I would pray for a new beginning. Oh, please, this year, this day, please, God, let me keep my mouth shut. Help me to sit still. Help me to be a good girl. Well, one May, we had a ballet recital. And do you know who was in the audience? Mrs. Prather. I was so scared. Here was this teacher who told me and called me motor mouth and told me to sit still 1 billion times, was out in the audience, and she was going to watch me dance. But everything is beautiful at the ballet. As usual, when I started moving my feet and my hands and my body, something took over. And I danced. And afterwards, she came up to me. Sharon, you are a beautiful dancer. And I noticed that when you're dancing, you're not talking. After that, I'd like to tell you that I was always quiet in Mrs. Prather's class, but I wasn't. But there was something different in the way she looked at me. It was almost like in that other place, she could see this girl, this young girl, and she had more patience. And I didn't dread school near as much because I saw her as someone who liked ballet and who had seen a different part of me. Sometimes that's all new beginnings are, is a little bit of wiping the eyes and seeing ourselves just a little bit differently. Seeing another person just a bit differently. Today, you've been hearing about new beginnings in stories. You've heard Matt and Jonathan speak of new beginnings that we've experienced. And now, for a couple of minutes, you have inside your bulletin a whole blank space. You are invited to contemplate, whether through words or poetry, through drawing, or seriously, through talking with the person next to you. You can speak out loud. What new beginning are you longing for? This day, this moment. What new beginning are you longing for? Give yourself and your heart some space to talk again, to write, or to think. Know that God will listen.
We have heard different beginnings. Some of them imagined in fantastical stories we may have heard as kids or movies we have seen with kids. Some of them familiar and rooted in our faith. We have lots of beginnings, and we have thought of our hopes for new beginnings and what we long for, and have heard Micah's longing and hope for a new shepherd. Sometimes when we think of new beginning, we think everything has to start brand new and different, and that it has to be so far removed from what we know now. But what I like about this table is that Jesus took something very mundane, something they did every day, gather around and eat a meal, and made it and showed it to us to be sacred. That in the everyday, in our lives now, we can know a new beginning. A life filled with hope and promise. A life where God has promised to be with us. And all who ache like Micah for that new hope and that new beginning are invited to come feast on God's promise. Light in the darkness. New life and grace. Today we'll be taking communion by intinction, which means we'll have stations where you are invited to come forward, break a piece of bread off the loaf, and dip it in the cup, and take communion that way. We will have 2 gluten-free stations, one at the back of the sanctuary here, and on this side of the balcony, your left. The balcony will be a gluten-free as well as a regular station on the left there. If you are unable to rise and come forward, at once people come through the lines, our servers will be watching, signal to them, and they will bring you communion. Let us give thanks to God for this feast.